everybody. Welcome to Season 3.
Hello and welcome to another fun-packed edition of Paranormal Versus. Sorry we've been away for a while, but now we are back and bigger than ever. There's been a few changes to the season. As you can tell, my wonderful co-host Michael Kopf is still here, and we've got a special co-host tonight. I'm just trying to figure it out because I always get this wrong. Enoch Smith. Enoch Smith?
That's correct.
Trying my best to get it right. Tonight it's just going to be the hosts and we're going to chat about everything paranormal. So if there's anybody that wants to ask any questions about personal experiences of our own or anything to do with a geological location, because I'm from the UK, obviously, judging by my dodgy accent. Michael's from Texas and Enoch's from North Carolina. So basically, if there's anything you just want to know about, like the paranormal cryptids or whatever from our locations, put it in the comments and we'll do our best to answer it. So, yes, Michael, is there anything you want to say tonight?
I'd just like to say howdy, y'all.
Howdy, y'all.
I just thought I'd have some fun since you said Texas.
Yep.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, thank you for coming on.
So glad that you could come on. Yeah. Really glad that you could come on. It'll be fun anyway, so.
Yeah, definitely fun.
I'm excited to be back and excited for Season 3 and all that it's going to bring us.
Yeah. Yes, it's definitely fun. We've got some amazing guests lined up for the next few months, so yeah. Just noticed we've got a viewer there listening from California. Hello, viewer. Hello, is it Mona?
Mona7198.
Hi. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see properly. But does anybody want to start talking about, I don't know, what experiences they've had, or
why don't we start with sharing what we've been going on while we were on break?
Yeah.
We'll start with you, Kell.
As you know, that for a while I was hosting at the Ancient Ramen down in Gloucestershire with Matt, and basically there was a few things that happened there, but obviously we chose to leave, so we're not there no more. But I haven't really done that much apart from that in the paranormal for a while, because that was like a bit of a handful, a bit of a trek. So, but I'm hoping to get things started soon. So, yeah, there's nothing really interesting going on right now.
All right, well, I'll go next. So I have done a few paranormal events where I went and investigated some locations, and I have my other podcast shows that I've been doing, and I actually took, I'm really proud of myself, 2 weeks off from shows every day.
Wow.
So that was a nice break, and it gave me enough time to prepare for Season 3. And so I am like pumped up and ready to go. And I had
I'm
a
shocked.
yeah, I
I'm
had a friend
shocked you
ask
actually took
me.
time off.
Yeah, I know. I rarely do, and I had a friend that runs a show, and she's like, "How do you keep from burning out?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't yet, but I did decide to take 2 weeks off because I was looking at my episode counts, and I was like, I think I did more than enough episodes for the year to." So I was like, I felt comfortable going, I'm not robbing people of the shows if I take some time away. So I
Yeah,
tried
you're always getting
to,
into something.
yeah.
Cool.
So that's what I've been doing. And,
You certainly are the podcast king, aren't you, Michael?
I, you know, I have to say, I was talking with a friend and we were talking about where we wanted our lives to go and where we are now. And I said to her, growing up, I always thought I would be a teacher, but it never worked out. And she laughed and she goes, Well, you realize you teach people on your podcast shows. And I was like, Never thought about it that way. So I've come full circle to now being the teacher.
Hmm.
So we were commenting how things don't always look the way we think they're going to look growing up. And so you still may achieve your dream, just not the way you thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, life's
Yeah.
weird like that sometimes.
Certainly is.
It is.
So, Enoch, what have you had going on? Anything?
Nothing much as far as paranormal. I've been
Hmm.
so tied up with the holidays and stuff like that. We ended up hosting Thanksgiving, Christmas, did some stuff on New Year's, which didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to do a whole lot of stuff for New Year's. It was actually a decent little bit of a break. Um, Outside of dealing with family and trying to get this business off the ground, it has been one thing after another. Running around with my head cut off, as we say in the South.
I can
Yes,
imagine.
we do.
So anyway, just a few questions anyway. Where you're from, Enoch, there's like obviously you've got the mountains and you've got the sea and everything else like that. There was an island around your way that people disappeared from, and it's like a mystery. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, yes, yes. That's the Outer Banks. Excuse me. Um, One of the most famous coastal stories out there. The whole lost colony tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, English came and dropped off some settlers and ended up leaving them for a while to see, how they were able to survive and stuff. They came across some local natives. The English left and came back about 3 years later, only to find that all of their settlers were gone except for one skeleton. And beside the tree that the skeleton was laying beside was the words carved into it, Croatoan. And it's still a big mystery to this day. We don't really exactly know what's going on. There's still people out there trying to figure this out. It's actually
Wow.
really neat. The Outer Banks is just a beautiful spot and all kinds of history in itself between pirates and stuff like that. It is all over the place.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It certainly is a bit like of a mystery, like when a whole like load of people go missing and there's just like no sign of them whatsoever. That's really weird.
Gone.
Yeah, I wonder if it was aliens.
I was going to say,
Never
it's
know.
almost like they went through a portal.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, you would have had like remains or something, if there had been disaster or something, but for a whole like little town thing to disappear, that is
Yeah.
certainly
I don't even
strange.
think they found burial sites or anything.
Hmm.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, the whole Roanoke Lost Colony story is just amazing. And
Yeah.
it always alters from who's telling it just slightly. And if you go out there and talk to them, it's the same story, but with different, like greater differences.
Hmm.
Um, Talking to half those people out there on certain islands, you can barely even understand them. It's almost like a separate language. They're speaking English. It's just insanely difficult to understand unless you're from that area.
Wow. Hmm. Michael?
Oh, you said you had more questions, so I was waiting for a question.
I was waiting to see if you had a question anyway. So what else? I mean, you've got like obviously the mountains near around where you live as well. I've been like looking into it, and there's been some strange things going on in there. You've got like obviously the is it the Wendigo apparently is around there?
The Wendigo, that's another old native story. That's around a lot of areas. A lot of reports and people talk about stuff like that, especially old school tales. Big in the mountains areas, swampy areas, and stuff like that. We also have something called the Boojum,
Right.
which is another native lynx tale. It's kind of like a Bigfoot type creature, long hair, human type face, and people usually see it from a distance walking along the mountains. We have mysterious lights that just pop up over the Blue Ridge, um, slowly moving in and out behind trees, and nobody can explain it because it's an uninhabited area mostly.
Wow.
Um, Surrounding those areas is an area called the Devil's Tramping Ground. Sometimes in the South, it's called the Devil's Stomping Ground, but that's a very interesting story in itself as well.
Hmm.
People don't like to sleep there anymore. I know Boy Scout tales from back in the day, they would naturally set up camp because it was just a clearing in a huge, thick, wooded area.
Yeah.
And whenever they would wake up the next morning, all their tents would be pushed off to the side, out of the circle. And nobody had no memory of anything like that happening. Nobody woke up from their tents being dragged or anything like that. But it's mysterious in the aspect that nothing grows. It's just
Hmm.
solid sand.
Wow, that's weird. That's
Yes, right. I've
strange.
seen it personally. It's very different. Like
Hmm.
I wasn't expecting just to jump out. We drove by and we were thinking we were gonna have to walk down like a little dirt road or something. No, it was like right there. You could see it, and I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was very interesting to see. There was nothing growing in it, and it's a perfect circle.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. Now, there's something else that's interesting about the Outer Banks area that's of legend. I'm surprised, Kel, you didn't come across that one. The
What one was
pirates,
that?
the
Yeah.
pirates, and Blackbeard and his
Yep.
treasure and everything.
Yeah. When I eventually get out there to America, I would like to go treasure hunting and looking for Blackbeard's treasure. Take a metal detector or something.
Yeah,
That would be cool.
yeah. They find pieces of it here and there.
Wow.
A couple years back, they actually found an anchor, and once they cleaned it up some, it was marked the English or the correct English sigils or whatever were on it and stuff, and they were able to trace it back to supposedly the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was his ship. But they find little things like that all the time. I think they found a particular mast um, dating back to that same time period. But
Hmm.
yeah, they every 3 or 4 years you hear about something else that's been found.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm curious if you guys had the same effect that Florida has, where a storm will come through like hurricane waters, and all of a suddenly a wreck will be on the beach just sitting there, and people just walk up and are like, where did this come from, man? What
Yes,
is this?
yes. There's actually a shipwreck that is exposed right now on the actual beach itself, um, on Topsail Island, close to where I live. The people ask not to touch it, but of course people like to go around and just look at it, take pictures. But it's nothing incredibly famous. But whenever a big storm comes through, or some big surge, or sometimes even really good like super moon, full moon, something like where the tide shifts a little bit, it uncovers itself just a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you go back out there the next day and it's completely gone.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we do have stuff like that. And one of the biggest things that people love to do after a big storm or hurricane, hurricanes especially, is to go out there on the beaches with metal detectors and stuff. I've had family members that have found old school Civil War relics, Revolutionary War relics. You can always see it from the water too. It has this very distinct patina color, that shows that there was like an old lead ball or something like that, and you just pluck it right up, and
Wow.
it's really neat to find.
So, like, obviously, the area you're from, I mean, have you been investigating down there a while or?
Uh, Not too much. Most of the stuff that I usually come across is by accident, like nothing
Mhm.
I ever asked for. I'm not going to say
Right.
necessarily that it's a ghost or a demon or anything like that, but I will say it's completely unexplained, which by definition would be paranormal. But
Mhm.
there are a couple of good sites that I would like to investigate here within this year. That's one of my goals this year is to actually get out and do a little bit more exploring this year because I get so caught up with doing everything here at the house that I lose sight of all reality around me and I have to like slap myself out of it. Okay, let's go do something for yourself now. Let's go do this. Let's go explore this. And so
Yeah.
hopefully some good changes for 2025.
Yeah. I know the feeling. It's like obviously just life sort of takes over and like you get
Mhm.
caught up. Unless you're like Michael that like lives and breathes it 24/7.
Yeah,
I try to.
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah, I
mean
think I
it
see
would
your face
be
on the internet more than other people's.
the it's very hard to like get locations and stuff like that over here. I don't know if it's the same over there, but it's like now that everybody and the uncle is into this sort of stuff, it's like people have put the prices up and it's like absolutely ridiculous to investigate places. And it's
Hmm.
like so it's brilliant when you just get like that little gem where nobody else is like obviously investigated and you're the first people in there to do the investigation. That's what I like doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes one of two ways, especially here in the South. People are very protective over property that they own,
Mm,
especially if it's got some historical aspect to it. Um, you have to know somebody that knows somebody to really get, in on something like a very highly investigated area or wanting to be investigated. But when it comes to um, other people that actually have grown hip to the idea where I can actually make some money, letting people, come investigate this, and all they're doing is walking around, doing what they're supposed to do. They're not there to damage anything. They're
mhm.
really open to it. But a lot of things like that in the South are protected now historically.
Yeah.
So you have to go through all kinds of bells and whistles and paperworks and special permissions and stuff like that. But you can get pretty lucky on certain things, like the battleship, the U.S. North Carolina.
Mm.
You can investigate that. They have big group type investigations, which are fun, but I don't think that you're going to be able to get a lot of good uh, evidence or anything like that because so many footsteps, so many people breathing. This person over here just coughed. It kind of just muddles out all the stuff you're trying to get. But I'm not exactly sure what the prices are since things have changed so much in price as of late. But I know you can get like a group of people, like maybe 6 people, and rent it out for like 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that, and give them a fee, and they'll let you just go crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually did a virtual investigation of it.
A
It's a cool
virtual.
spot.
Yeah.
How do you do virtual investigation? Just like on the internet type of thing?
So a friend of mine, his team, Erie Expeditions,
Mhm.
was investigating and they had cameras all over and they tapped the feed onto Facebook. And so me and a friend in Georgia were on there and we were commentating what's going on for everybody that was watching on Facebook. So it was like if you've ever seen the Tennessee Ray Chasers Haunted Live show where the guy commentates and then says, "Oh, let's go here and let's see what they're investigating." That's what my friend and I were doing. And it was rather interesting because there was one room they were all in and they were like just sitting around talking. I think it was the galley. And they were talking at the table and they had like four of those K2s pointing to each other. And at one point, they had all their mics muted so they wouldn't interfere with other investigations going on. And we were like trying to get a hold of them because all four K2s were going off either up like two colors or full on. They would never react the same, all four. They would be different. And that's what was making us interested because they're all in the same area, pointing towards each other, slightly offset, but some would be fully activated. Some would be slightly activated. There was never 2 K2s reacting identical.
Wow. That's a bit weird.
It is, and that's why we were like, this is definitely paranormal, because something is activating that one more than that one, and that one and that one. So it can't be they're feeding off each other and they're setting each other off, because they would be the same.
Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it is. So what has been, this is to both of you, obviously, what's been your most memorable paranormal experience to date?
Being on this show.
Oh, Michael, you haven't lived then, have you?
No, my most memorable was going to Broken Bow Asylum, which is no longer open, and I was standing face to face with this energy that was blue, sparkly, like almost like fireworks going off.
Wow.
And it approached me and stood in front of me, and a friend of mine that's a medium leans over my shoulder and goes, "It's right in front of you." And I'm like, "Oh, I know it's right in front of me." And I was not backing down. I was like, I just knew we were in like a who's who kind of match. And so I was like, I'm not backing down. One of us is going to back down, but it ain't going to be me. And so I just stood there silent, staring at it. And finally it backed off, and I heard a noise in another room. So I go in, and of course, I don't know if you all are familiar with body cams, but they're never angled the right way when stuff is really happening.
Yeah.
And mine was angled to the left while the sparkly was on the right, of course. But here's the interesting thing. So I go into the room, and there's this white mass starts to form and comes towards me, and then dissipates. And so I leave the room. And when I get home to check the body cam so I can go, oh my God, look at what I got on my body cam. What do you all think this is? The body cam only recorded 23 seconds of 5 minutes. It died the second I went in there and started back up when I left the room.
Wow. That's happened to me, sort of similar, but I'll tell you about that later.
And I asked a couple of police officers that are paranormal investigators, and I said, has your body cam ever turned itself off and turned itself back on? And they said, no, they can't do that. They're not designed for that. That's impossible for a body cam. Something has to turn it off. They could not explain how I only got 23 seconds and everything else was 5 minutes.
Weird.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah,
I do know that, like, when we were down at the Ancient Ram, me and Matt, basically we used to stay there overnight, and like lock up the next morning, make sure everything was fine, and then we used to like do a little bit of investigation for ourselves because we were allowed to, and then we used to lock up and go like home. And so what we did the first time we stayed there, we put a night vision camera over the whole entire room. It's like the lounge, so you could see, like, we were sleeping in a mattress airbed thing on the floor, and we wanted to see while we were asleep if anything happened. Now, basically, the weird thing that was when we watched back that night, Matt says I was speaking Latin in my sleep, which I can't speak Latin, so I don't know what was going on there. But when we've looked back at the camera, we've realised that it only was recording. It was actually recording all night, but the files were corrupt up until the sun come out, and then when the sun come up, that's when you could watch it from there. But before that, the files were corrupt, so we don't know why only part of it was corrupt. It was a bit weird, and then the sun came up, and then it wasn't corrupt anymore.
They didn't want to be seen, so they corrupted the files.
So it missed the part with me speaking Latin as well, because we tried to go through it, and it was dark when I was speaking Latin, so weird.
That is weird.
Alrighty, what's yours?
I've had some interesting encounters um, during investigations and stuff, but I think the one that I probably think about the most was during a normal day at home. Me and my oldest son were at home by ourselves. He was younger at the time, and he was eating some chips, just jumping around the living room. And I saw him jump on the couch, and I was like, "Listen, if you're going to eat those chips, you need to sit down. And if you don't, you could choke." And he was going to listen to me, and it wasn't maybe 3 seconds after I said that, I was walking over to him to say, "Hey, listen, you need to stop jumping while you're eating." He jumped off the couch, like toward me to stop, the jumping. And he just had like a blank look on his face. And I said, "What's wrong?" And then he automatically was like trying to go for air. So he was like actively choking, flipped my mind out. Um, so I was doing all the back slaps and, Heimlichs and stuff that you would do on a little kid, trying to get this thing dislodged. And I noticed that it was not budging at all. There was no air sounds, no nothing.
Oh.
So I, being in, former medicine, I rushed to the back part of the house and grabbed my med bag out. And by that time, he had just passed out, started turning blue around his mouth and everything like that. So I reached down his throat with my tools and pulled the chip out manually. And it wasn't a second before he, took a huge breath. And I was making sure that everything was clear. And I was looking at him and I was rubbing him, trying to stimulate him and wake him up and stuff. And I just kind of sat there with him, like in shock about what just happened. And I was just kind of holding him, like, "Are you okay? Everything's okay?" He was whimpering a little bit, not too much crying. I think he was more like dumbfounded, like, what just happened?
Mm.
And as I'm still holding him, I didn't want to let him go. I'm walking back to the other room. I was like, "Okay, we're going to put these chips up." He said, "I need my ball back." And I said, "Well, your ball? What are you talking about? You haven't played with the ball today." He said, "Well, this lady has my ball and I want it back." And I was like, I didn't even think about what was being said. I was like, okay, because when you pass out or something like that, you have like a
Yeah.
strange dream or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, he said this lady also told Manu, which is what my son calls my mother, his grandmother, that she said, "Tell her I said hello." And I was like, okay, well, that's a little strange. So I didn't think nothing much about it. I reported the incident to like my family and stuff when I saw them later on that day. They were like, "Wow, that's weird." A couple days later, I recently got a laptop about a week before, a new one. So I was playing with it, seeing, what the capabilities and stuff were. And I uploaded a whole bunch of pictures and stuff from the past. And I hooked it up to my TV because we were trying to like stream movies and stuff. But whenever it would go into like a screensaver mode, I had it set to where it would do like a slideshow from all the pictures that were set on my computer. And we were sitting there doing something, and all of a sudden, Liam, my oldest, comes running toward us, and it was me and my sister come running toward us and saying, "Come here, come here, come here!" And then he pointed at the TV screen and said, "She has my ball." And I said, "What are you talking about?" So I go in there and I look, and it's a picture of my grandmother, which she had passed before he was even born.
Wow.
And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yes, she has my ball. You need to let her know that I'm going to need that back." And I said, "Is this the one that also said to tell your grandma that she said hello?" He said, "Yes, all the same thing." He said, "She was there. She had my ball. She held my hand. And then I woke up with you after the whole chip thing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I immediately called my mom and told her about it. She breaks down. She's like, "Oh my gosh. While he was going through that situation, your grandmother came and just kind of made him stay comfortable during everything to kind of just kind of ease him a little bit." But I think about that situation quite often because he had never
Mm.
really we were in the process of moving and stuff like that multiple times when he was that age. So I didn't have like pictures displayed out. He didn't really see, old family members at the time that have already passed on and stuff. It was just what I had on my computer at the time. We still had boxes and stuff that were unpacked. So he had never seen this person before ever until
Wow.
that moment.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think about that quite often because that was very, very strange, but
Hmm.
special.
I have a strange question. How much time passed between the event and him seeing that photo?
Maybe 2 days.
Oh, okay. Because to me, I was thinking if it was like weeks or months, that's really impressive that he could recall that. But even 2 days later, that's still
Yeah.
impressive that he could recall that image so clearly.
Yeah.
Well, he loved the movie Cars. He was all about the Lightning McQueen character. And that ball that he was talking about had Lightning McQueen on it. So he always knew where it was. And when he said she had my ball and he wanted it back, like he he had the investigation on lock. Like he knew where his stuff was. So as soon as he saw that picture, he was like, "Nope, that's her. I need that ball."
Wow. Yeah. That is pretty cool.
That is
Um,
cool.
yeah, as Matt says there, we caught me dad's like a reflection in my kitchen window. It was after we'd done well, me and Michael had done a show once. I video called Matt, and the he took a screenshot and he sent it to us, and he didn't notice it at first. But then when I zoomed in, I was like, "Oh my god, that's my dad standing looking out the kitchen window with his back towards
Wow.
me." And like I've still got it, I can show you. And when you zoom in, and then it's the same. I've got a photo of him that used to be up on my wall, and he was wearing exactly the same clothes as what was in the photo on the wall. But I've showed it to all my family members, and I go, "Who's that?" in the reflection, they go, "Oh, that's my dad or my granddad." So it's like family members have confirmed it was definitely him standing there, same
Wow.
height and everything. You can just see him looking through there. So that was pretty cool. But then there was another time when I was on video call to Matt at the same time, when he was in his old house, and he like just got a strange look on his face, and I looked behind him and I thought, who the hell's that woman in his like other room, what his office room? And I'm thinking, why is there a woman in there? Has she just walked in, or this sounds strange, but I was thinking, is he trying to hide somebody from us in there? And I was thinking, that's not like him at all. So I was like, Matt, who's that woman behind you? And he was just like, you seen her as well, did you? I was like, yeah. You went, describe it to us. I went, she's got blonde, curlyish hair. He was like, yeah, it's the same one as I seen. I was like, so who was it? He went, that's my ex who died years and years ago. I was like, oh my God. The shivers went through us like you wouldn't believe. But
Wow.
yeah, it's happened a couple of times when I've been on video call at the same house I was in. He was in the office bit, so the camera was pointing towards his front door area, and I seen a man walk straight past him and go into his bedroom. And I was like, Matt, who's just gone into your bedroom? And he like looked as if to say, oh God, yeah, we'll go again, not again. And he went and checked, nobody there. He went, can you describe him? I says, yeah. He's like obviously a man. He's got like a flat cap type of thing on. I says, and it looks like he's got coveralls on with something clipping onto his legs. So I thought he might have been a gardener or something like that, or somebody that was like just got off his bicycles, but we never found out who he was. But yeah, it's amazing what you can capture on video camera. Like, I mean, just like on a call when you don't actually realize it.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Messenger video seems to catch a lot of things. That's right. Definitely.
Yeah. That means your dad was looking after you.
I've got this amazing friend who's like one of the best mediums I've ever met in my life. He's called Craig Morris. He's actually been on the show once. And I'm very skeptical about mediums, but this guy, the things he told me, there's nobody could know. Basically, he came into my house because we were doing an investigation at Nelson. So he came in to do it with her. And as he walked in my house, and he's like, yeah, your dad, yeah. I was like, I thought he would be.
Wow.
So I got a good question for all of us.
Come on then. Spit it
What
out.
event happened that solidified your belief, if you have one, that the afterlife is real and that people do exist after parting from here?
E, do you want to answer that first?
Sure. Again, it was unexpected, not during an investigation. Um, when I was younger, I really didn't even know that people investigated things like that. I just always thought it was a natural occurrence when people saw things. This was, of course, in the 80s, where Ghostbusters were out. There was no ghost hunter shows or anything like that. I happened to see an older guy. I was laying in bed. I was on the bottom bunk. My sister was above me. I was laying in bed and I was facing the hall, and the hall light was on because we were young. We had to have the hall light on in order to go to sleep, feel safe. This older gentleman walked through. He had a pipe. He had a scraggly old beard. He had like a fedora type hat that you would wear like in an old detective type show with a long trench coat and a scarf. And I saw him. He walked to the door. He looked. He like looked toward me. He tipped his hat, straightened up, and walked down the hallway. The funny thing was that was my mom was sitting at the end of the hallway in the recliner. She was on the telephone. And as she said it, I heard say, "Oh my gosh, it got so cold. Let me get up and get a blanket real quick." I didn't think nothing of it at the time. I'm just thinking about this kind of stuff as I'm older. Like, wow, I remember her saying, "Wow, it's cold all of a sudden." That's why she stood up. So it took everything in my body to gain the courage to jump up and run down the hallway in the same path that this, guy I just saw walking. Because I honestly thought this guy was in our house. I was like, "What in the world is this guy
Yeah.
doing here?" And I was like, "Mom, like this guy." And I was not crying, but I was like, "Listen, no, no, you have to listen. No, stop. Just listen." I was frantic. Like, you gotta listen to me. So I described him to her. She said, "Wow, that sounds like somebody I know." So she went and got her photo album and she started scrolling through. And she said, "Was it this guy? He had the same hat, same scarf, same type of jacket. It wasn't the same color, but same type of jacket. And he had a pipe in his hand while he was dropped it down to take a picture. The picture was in black and white. That's how old this picture was. And it was my great grandfather, her grandfather Barnes."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that blew my mind." So as a kid, she called her sister over, and my cousin came with him, and he was like, "So, I heard you saw a ghost last night." And he was all into it. And I was like, "Well, my mom told me it was, Grandpa Barnes." He was like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." And of course, they had no basis of comparison. They just saw the picture that my mom pulled out. But I think that can kind of solidified my mom's beliefs in certain things too, because me being able to describe her grandmother, they even passed away before she was born,
Wow.
blew her mind. And I think as a kid, that kind of solidified me in the aspect of, yeah, there is something other than, ghost stories and things to scare you like at Halloween. Or we always were going to church and brought up Christians. So we knew that there was an afterlife, but to see something like that with my own eyes at maybe 10 years old, that blew my mind.
Yeah. Michael?
Well, for me, growing up the way I did, I wasn't much of a stranger to, hearing or seeing things on the other side. But I would say the moment, though, that I was like, had that undeniable was, let's see, 3 days after my dad passed away, I was on a video call with a friend who was running an investigation, and I was watching her investigation, and she had to step away and said, "Can you watch the phone, watch what's going on, and, watch the live and everything, and let me know if anything happens." And I was like, "All right." So nothing really exciting, except I would ask a question of the ghosts that are there because I've been there, and they would respond. And I'm amazed they're responding to a text on a phone and going, "I can't believe this is actually working." But at 1 o'clock, I was like, "I got to get some sleep. I'm emotional. I got to try and get some sleep." And she's like, "I understand. Go to sleep." And so I talked to her 3 days later or 2 days later, and I messaged her and I was like, "So how did your investigation go?" And she goes, "Oh my God, you are not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" She goes, "At 2 in the morning, Friday night, we had a voice come over with a name." And I was like, "Really?" And she was like, "And this name has never been mentioned here before." And I was like, "Okay." And then she says, "But that's not the really crazy thing. The next night, nobody's equipment would work. Everybody came, they would charge up their stuff, then they would go to get started, and it drained right out." And it was like, I was trying to figure out if we're even going to do this. and I got hungry for something, and I never get hungry for this. And so, long story short, the name and the food was my father.
Wow.
Hmm.
And he went where he thought I would be investigating and was making himself known there in a way that he's like, only I would get
Hmm.
and would connect. And he always supported my paranormal endeavors, being with the shows and investigations. So I was like, when that happened, I was like, yeah, you can't tell me this isn't real, because my friend that's telling me this on the phone has never met him. I never talked about him
Hmm.
with her. And so it was like, total no way she could make this up just to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
And the reason I don't mention the name and the food is because a friend of ours, Kell, when I was telling him, he said, don't mention those key things, because if someone's listening, they'll use it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I got really cryptic really quick with it, is because, yeah, I want to keep it to where if you get it right, I know it's legit.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's the reason why I'm a little bit skeptical with like some mediums, because it's like some of them will just troll the internet to see what they can get on you and use that. But
Yeah.
like I say, yeah, I would probably be the same. But I think the thing that got me, well, there's been so many instances for me that made the paranormal real to me. I had my first experience as a child, which everybody already knows about that one anyway. But I think the thing that made it more real for me was the one that happened in my tattoo studio when I was decorating, and the man actually vanished in front of my eyes. That is that is just, I mean, at the time I thought I was going crazy, so I thought he was a real person. So interesting, that one.
Wow.
Um, but I mean, I've had so many things that's happened. It's unreal. I just sometimes I wonder whether I just attract them, or whether like other people get this sort of thing happen but don't actually notice it. I mean, when you think about it, if you're walking down the street full of people, you wouldn't even know if you actually seen a ghost, or whether like, because I mean, the one I seen that time was solid. It was like a person until it started evaporating in front of us. But I mean, you could walk past them every single day and not actually notice that it's a ghost. You know what I mean? So how many is it that we actually do miss?
True.
Right.
It's an interesting thought.
And yeah, and admittedly, I had a reason why I asked that question, is because I don't know if you've noticed, but so many people in the paranormal field and other fields, they look at a topic and say, this is the definitive answer.
Mm,
If it's not like this, then it's questionable.
hmm.
And what I loved is each one of our stories were similar in nature, but different. And so it was
Yeah.
showing there is no set answer.
Mm,
Everybody's experience is different. So we can't discount someone's experience because it
yeah.
doesn't match ours.
Yeah. That's true. Very
I
true.
agree. And every single one of the stories that we just spoke about had our own personal family involved in it as well. So there's trending like type stuff there.
Hmm.
Right. And Matt's chiming in with, when we die, we don't actually die. Consciousness carries on and we pass into another dimension. Our souls are immortal. We have so much to look forward to one day. This is just the beginning.
Hmm. I've
That's
always
true,
believed that.
actually.
Yeah. I've always believed that when we die, we're like, I don't believe like in heaven and hell and stuff like that. That's my personal belief. But I believe that like our consciousness does travel to like a different dimension, or I don't, well, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd like to think it's a different dimension. And like when we see them, that's when we're overlapping, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So
Like
that's
the
my
planes
theory
kind of
anyway.
merge at one
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and somebody pointed out something that I thought was rather interesting is how we classify the spirits that we see, like intellectual, repetitive, just going through motion, or, conscious. And the one where they say, they're just going through the motions, pointed out and said, because we can't hear them, they could be another dimension that
Mm.
we're seeing, or a parallel Earth that we're seeing, because the veil got so thin right then and there. And energies just aligned that opened up a window, so to speak. And they're looking at you, looking at them, and both of you are trying to figure out what in the world is going on right now. And because it happens so often, people are like, oh, she's just, washing the dishes like she always does. Well, it could be dinner time in another dimension and they just finished and the veil just happens to open then. And
Yeah.
they're like, we may be watching another dimension
Mm-hmm.
that's watching us and doesn't know how to respond either.
Yeah.
And that's why it's, and it really goes to point out that we really are still learning so much, and there's still so much unexplained that when people say, yeah, I'm the expert and I can definitively tell you this or that, I'm like, how can you know without a doubt it's this or that when there's so many unanswered questions?
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a
Mm-hmm.
self-experience type situation.
Yeah.
That's where that whole
There's a
faith thing comes in.
there's another, like, obviously part of that what you were just saying there, Michael. It could be possibly that, like, obviously there's a like a split, and like you're seeing back into the past, or like, I mean, people from the past they don't really talk that much about ghosts, but they could have been seeing us in the future and thinking that we're the ghost type of thing. You know what I mean? If that
Right,
makes sense.
because we're finding we've been taught time is linear and it's actually looped.
Hmm.
So the future, the past, and the present are all happening in one singular moment. And that's why it's like they always say, like, you can remember the past because you're seeing it and you're seeing a memory of it. And the future is harder to see because you haven't experienced it yet, because
Yeah.
it's still unfolding in the present moment. So that's why it's like they're all at the same time, but one's more easy to trap someone than another.
Yeah. Hmm. Oh.
Oh, Auric Vibe, my friend, is saying, does it have to be a this or that answer question? If we have multiple dimensions, can it be multiple answers and all be correct?
Yeah. Well, there's no specific like right or wrong with this, is there? So it could be, yeah.
Mm. And I'm curious, E, with your paranormal background and your experiences and everything, what lines do you draw and say, I'm not going to think about that because that's just too far out for me. I'm going to keep it here. Do you have
As
that or
in,
no?
like, experiential, or
Like explaining to someone, like, or if you experience, something like, we mentioned portals, are you
gotcha.
like, or dimensions, are you like, nope, not going into dimensions?
I tend to not speak about certain things that I don't feel confident that I am extremely educated in. I'm one of those listening type guys, and whenever I feel like I have a decent grasp on my own personal beliefs that already exist, I can intertwine my explanation to try to help somebody else feel better. Um, what is the old Southern expression? My grandmother and grandfather used to always say it. The fool runs his mouth, but everybody knows he's a fool. But if you keep your mouth shut, they can't actually say you remove all doubt when you open your mouth.
Mm.
So I usually try to keep my mouth shut until I am comfortable with the level of knowledge I have on the subject. I am a very open-minded person. Like I have my own personal beliefs, and I'll listen to what everybody else said. Doesn't change anything um, of my opinion about them at all. Um, there's not too many lines I do draw because I'm one of those people that kind of thirst for information. Um, but yeah, very open-minded. Not too many lines. I got asked this question not too long ago. People have a hard time um, wanting to deal with demons or having to deal with demons or evil spirits or entities or whatever they go, they're afraid that it's going to follow them home and stuff like that. I'm one of those people that believe, yes, they're powerful, they can attach themselves to you and stuff like that. But if you refuse and say, no, this is my space, I'm not giving you permission, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, they cannot. That's my personal belief. So, like, if we're in a situation like, oh, there's an evil presence here, I'm not worried about it.
Hmm.
I'm not worried about it at all. I'll respect what it is in the aspect of be cautious, but I'm not going to worry about it following me away because I'm not letting it.
Yeah.
So, like, I do draw certain lines, but
Yeah.
not in the aspects of things like that. I usually keep a very open mind, and I'm pretty solid on my beliefs when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of people that seem to have like negative attachments that go through like mental health issues. So people, when they're really low, it seems to be that's when they get attacked by these sort of things.
Mm, that
So what
happens a
I've heard
lot.
anyway.
So you actually hit on something that was another question I was going to pose towards the group E, and that was when you're talking with people about if they've had a paranormal experience or not. And so my question to all of you, and I'll answer as well, is when you come up to someone that says, I've never had a paranormal experience, so I'm a not, I don't believe any of this. But how do you approach it, and do you give an example to say, hey, have you ever had this happen? And try to open their minds that way, or do you just say, okay, that's your way and walk away?
Well, I mean, unless you want to answer that question first, Kel.
No, go ahead.
I personally don't play too much on it because a lot of times people will say that just because they're uncomfortable with talking about it, period. They'll
Mm,
automatically assume if I talk about it, then I'm allowing this type of energy to be surrounded by me. So they'd rather avoid it altogether. Um, I wouldn't really necessarily ask them, well, hey, does the hair on the back of your neck stand up on certain things? Or because not everybody has the same symptoms if they're detecting something around them. Me personally, I can usually walk into a house and I automatically feel odd. I can shake somebody's hand and automatically know that I really shouldn't have shaken this guy's hand, and I'll know something's off. Or I've had instances where I've shaken somebody's hand, or I've even looked at their face and I'm like, wow, they're going through something like big time. Not the obvious, like, symptoms. These people are putting on a fake smile and they're doing a really good job. You can shake somebody's hand and just feel like, oh, like it just literally weighs a ton. I don't really ask them too many things about it. I'll let them share. Um, but me personally, when it comes to stuff like this, I usually irritate a lot of other paranormal believers because I will approach every type of piece of evidence that I come across or experience that I come across as the biggest skeptic ever. I will do everything in the world to try to debunk it, to try to explain it scientifically.
hmm.
Oh, this door shut because the air conditioner return just cut on and it pulled all the suction and the door shut. And I will try to do my best to find out everything. That way, if I can't explain it, I feel comfortable in my own mind that I cannot actually explain it. Like it
Mm,
is completely abnormal. But I usually let them do the talking when it comes to stuff like this. I might ask the question, well, what makes you think that it's completely, out there? And that usually is the only question that you need to ask because they're going to usually do a deep dive in their faith or in their personal beliefs or something like that. But I don't push it too much because that usually ends the conversation really quick when you do.
hmm. Michael, you can answer your own question there.
All right. Well, one of the things that I sometimes will do is if I can read in them a general curiosity and a general like feeling of, empathic of this is, they legitimately are curious if they have or haven't had one, I'll go and I'll approach it as in saying, have you ever had a smell around you you couldn't explain because there's no source for it, like a flower, and you're inside a house with no flowers? And they'll go, yeah, I've had that. I'd say that's a paranormal experience. And they're like, you're kidding. I'm like, no. It's if something happens around you that gets your attention, you can't explain. That's a paranormal experience. It doesn't have to be a spirit walking by or a cabinet door open and closed. And I think that's kind of the misnomer, I think, that a lot of the ghost TV shows that people watch has placed in is, they define the paranormal experience as, hearing a voice or hearing bangs or opening and closing of doors and stuff like that. And it discounts the other stuff.
Yeah.
And so people will be having these experiences and never realize they're having them because they don't fit what they've been taught.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I like I say, I agree with both of you on that issue. With me, it's people always approach me with that sort of thing and ask me like, how do I do it? Do I do it the same way as what they do on the shows or stuff like that? But I've got all the scientific equipment that the SPR recommend that you have, like air pressure and stuff like that in the house. Basically check to see whether the person originally has got any sort of, I know this sounds horrible, but mental issues and they're not just making it up type of thing. But yeah, it's anything really could be paranormal, but it's like just trying to get that evidence. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably gone
No,
off
you're
topic a little
right.
bit there. My brain just goes blank at the minute, so you'll have to excuse me.
No, and you hit on something that, you say don't discount, but you have to be very careful with the mental aspect of it
Yeah.
because I was talking with some friends on an episode and they were sharing with me an experience they had where their son was dealing with some mental issues and they brought in a paranormal team, and the paranormal team says, wow, you have a lot of attachments, a lot of demons around you. I don't think, there may be no hope for you, and left. And
Wow.
so they then contacted the organization that I was talking with, and they were like, yeah, we'll come out, we'll take a look and everything. And they couldn't get out right away. And they were like, then the mother called them back like a day or two later and said, well, I regret to inform you, you don't need to come anymore. And they're like, no, it's okay. We believe you. We want to help you. She goes, no, you don't understand. I found my son this morning with a note because there was so many demons attached to me.
Oh my
I
God.
couldn't get free. He
Mm,
took his life.
that's horrendous.
And that just, I was like, yeah, that's why it
Mm,
really annoys me and is a peeve of mine when somebody will say the demon word without
yeah.
really looking at what's going on around, because there's so much that goes with that they don't think about and
Yeah.
they need to stop and think about.
Yeah. Hmm. It's like when there's those teams that'll just go in and like say, "Oh yes, well this is what we think it is," and it's like you've got to really be careful with what you actually see. You've got to get enough information, enough evidence, and stuff like that before you can actually like even give your opinion. Even your opinion's not 100%. So there's no proof in it. There's nothing to actually like we've been talking about. There's nothing scientifically to say what they are or what there is there, or you know what I mean. It's
Mm-hmm.
you just got to be very careful the way you word things, especially like obviously in that instance that you've just mentioned, Michael. You could hurt people even more. So
Yeah,
Right.
the word
yeah,
demon,
I would
especially
never
on
use the
TV, is
D word.
thrown around too much.
Yeah, very it
Yeah.
is. It is. I agree
It's
with
all for
that.
views.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna like change the because we haven't got that long. Actually, we're a little bit over. What are your opinions on all this disclosure and that's apparently starting to come out, and all these apparently people are now seeing plasma balls along with these drones? What's your opinions on it?
It's so off the wall. Like a lot of time, I mean, just like the course of history and all this other stuff, people always say, "I had a UFO encounter," or "I saw this," or "I saw that." It's always like you take it with a grain of salt. But now, when you're seeing it yourself in person,
Mm,
because I mean, I live right there off the coast. I mean, these things are all over the place. Like you can go outside and see them, and they're close enough to know that they're not a recognizable aircraft, whether they're alien or not, or government. I really have no idea. The most logical thing would say would be government, um, because that's what you're kind of trained, to believe in. It's just what you can see right in front of you.
yeah.
Um, Outside of that, I'm just waiting to see what's going on. Apparently, we're going to get some kind of briefing here before too long, but it's interesting. But I'm oddly not too worried about it, if that makes
hmm
sense.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And one of the things that I like to notice is the stories that they used to tell you that would be like to explain away what's going on. People aren't buying anymore.
Yeah.
They're like for example, like you were mentioning the drones, could be alien, could be government. We don't know.
hmm
And when I was looking at the news reports that people were putting on the not mainstream news sources and saying, trying to explain this away and going, do you notice what this story says really? And like the government goes, we don't know what they are. The military doesn't know what they are. But yet they're not putting planes in the air to investigate. They're
No, I
not.
don't believe it.
Yeah, you would
And
have thought that
so
would be the
that
first thing
tells
that they do.
me they know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go back and I'll, in my memory, go, well, we had that quote China air balloon
Mm-hmm.
that went from the Canadian border near the Pacific, circumvented the entire US, and then they shut it down. And I'm like, well, first off, if you thought this was a threat, why did you wait till it covered the entire country
Mm-hmm.
and then shoot it down? And if you think these are a threat, why aren't you shooting them down? Why are you letting them stay up? And so there's so many questions that people are sitting there, and it's like, this is absolutely right. Your story doesn't match the actions that you're portraying that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the disclosure, in my opinion, is we're no longer going to believe like the Roswell crash was a weather balloon. It's just not, their playbook ain't going to work anymore because we've gotten too, I'd like to say, intellectual for that to happen, but still remains to be seen sometimes when you see what's going on outside.
I think with like social media and other stuff like that, and like obviously people doing podcasts, groups, other people coming on, it's like more information is getting out there further now. So people are actually sitting up and listening to everybody's experiences rather than what the government are telling them. Um, I mean, wasn't it a couple of weeks ago Donald Trump turned around and said the government know exactly what these things are, but they're not willing to tell you, and I think they should tell you. So I think something's coming soon. But I think it's like what they were saying about Project Bluebeam and stuff like that. It's like, are they going to try and like fake an alien invasion or something like that? So,
Oh, there's no telling.
hmm
Yeah,
exactly.
and one of the things that I thought was interesting too is with the swarm of drones when they first showed up. Everybody was like, "Oh my god, what is this?" and everything, and they're like, "Well, we can't tell you." But then I remembered in the Super Bowl, there was a commercial for, I don't know, I'm not sure if it was the Navy or a company that was working with the Navy, but one of the scenes in the commercial was a ship in the ocean, a hatch opens, and a swarm of drones comes out.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's like, well, the government can't explain this and has no idea how this could work. And I'm like, you literally just showed us in a commercial a swarm of drones coming out of a ship. How are you telling me you cannot identify where these are coming from and what it is? You literally just showed us the exact same thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Interesting times.
Yes, we are living in interesting times. I think everything's going to end up coming to the head, and like something's going to happen. We're going to find out like what's been going on because we're not being told everything. So
yeah, and I literally have started saying, like, we talk about whistleblowers and everything, and they're how recent they are. I was like, no, I really think Shakespeare was kind of a whistleblower because his famous line of "May you always live in interesting times." Like, you look at today and you're like, oh my god, was he like foreshadowing this and telling us this was coming?
yeah. Oh well. Has any of us got any questions you want to ask?
Nope.
Nope.
I'm good to go.
Michael? I mean, you've asked a few anyway, but you've always got some questions sitting up your sleeve, haven't you?
Well, what's coming up for everybody? Anything big coming up?
I've got a big trip coming up in around about May, I think, April or May. So I'm excited for that. Apart from that, I've not really got anything. It's my birthday in a couple of weeks, so I'm probably going to be going out for the first time in ages for that. So I'm 21 again, in case you just want to know. No, but apart from that, I mean, obviously getting back into doing these again. The famous Paranormal Verses, obviously, because we've been off for quite a while. But yeah, this is about it. I've got no plans on doing any investigations right now. I was actually going to start getting filmed to do a series about the northeast where I'm from, doing the haunted, going around different places and telling the story about the history and the haunted element of it. But I don't know when that's going to start. Whether it's going to start when I come back from my trip abroad, or whether it's going to start beforehand. But I'll keep you informed with that.
Very cool. How about you, E?
I'm trying to keep my head down right now. I got to get my house back in order, and I know 2025 is going to be a very interesting year for me. I know there's going to be a lot of changes and stuff like that. But we shall see what the future unfolds for sure.
We shall.
I really appreciate you guys having me on, though. It's been a blast.
Yes, and before Kell gets on me for not answering my own question, I actually have a couple projects in the works of. I'm working on a book, and in July I will be speaking at a conference.
Wow, you get yourself around.
And not only am I speaking, I will also be emceeing the event with the founder of it. So
hang on. Did you say your MC in it?
emceeing and speaking.
MCing, like obviously rapping.
No, MC means like introducing a lot of the guests.
It's a master of ceremonies.
Like master of ceremonies.
God. I thought you meant because over here MCing, it's like a very fast rap type of thing. And I thought,
Wow.
I didn't realize he was doing that sort of thing. But
No, not that I'm aware of.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna
You
start
know,
thinking of a rap name for you, Mike.
I probably could. I am pretty good with words, but I don't know if I could rap it. Like, it'd probably sound really weird if I tried to rap.
yeah, MC Mickey K in the place.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that one.
I like that.
Yeah. But we're very glad to have you on. Like I've been trying to get you on for a little while, so just a little while. And you've always been popping on in the chat every time. Like obviously we've got the show, so we really do appreciate that. All the viewers that we get, we just absolutely love them. So about time we might actually get you on a bit more often if we can, like obviously drag you into it.
I love that.
Yeah, brilliant. That's excellent. Well, anyway, I'm just going to say that I really appreciate everybody that's took the time to put comments in, and obviously everybody that's watched. We absolutely love you all, and we'll be back with the guests soon on the next show, which Michael's got all the dates because Michael's the fantastic one that organizes everything. I just like basically get ready and just sit here, so I don't really do much. But Michael's got all the information that's coming up soon. And basically, if anybody wants to reach out to E, basically he's on Facebook, and if he wants to give any of his information out, he's quite happy to. But yeah, or you can get in touch with us and we can pass on a message. But I'm going to leave it over to Michael.
Yes, and so next episode will be January 30th, the second to last day of January. We're sneaking it in there on you guys, and we have an amazing guest lined up. It's if you've been watching my shows, you'll recognize her. That's all I'm going to say about it. But keep an eye out in the Paranormal Versus Facebook group because we will be coming more active in there. And like Cal said, we apologize for our kind of disappearing a little bit. We had a lot of stuff going on, and so we are back, and we are going to be more active, and we appreciate every one of you who are sticking around and watching and following along and bring more friends. And one thing I'm going to add that is really hard for me to do, but it is very crucial. Please like the videos, our episodes, wherever you are. It truly helps with the algorithms to keep our shows popular and up there. And so I know it's
and share if you can.
to click the like and invite people to watch with you and share it out to your friends. We love that when you do that. So thank you, everyone. And as I said in the beginning, welcome to season 3. It'll be full of a lot of surprises for you all.
Yeah, cool.
And with that, I think it's time to showcase the outro. Have fun, everyone.
Bye.